Hey, it's Anya doula, and welcome back to the Doin Motherhood Podcast, where we talk all things Black mothers today. All right, y'all. So, as you know, I am a birth doula by trade. That is the work that I do week in and week out. And so I missed my studio time this week. But I missed that studio time this week, all thanks to a beautiful baby boy who we all welcomed into the world early this morning. And so, so I do not have a new episode recorded for you today, but what I am sharing is the recording of a live episode I recorded when I was a guest on Sierra McClain. I was on a guest on her In the Key of Life radio show. She is a doula, also here in Houston, and she hosts a radio show that is focused on homeschooling. And so check that out. It's on All Real Radio. And check Sierra out because she's doing, amazing work in our community. And she's just all around a dope woman, a dope mother. She is a community activist, and so I'm happy to share this episode again on the State of Black Motherhood, and it was the killing of Daunte Wright that spurred this conversation about where we are as Black mothers in this social climate of racial uprisings and all of that. So anyway, I'm not going to keep talking because I need to get my rest. But I will be back next week with a brand new episode, and can't wait to have that conversation with you all. But before I go, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and leave a review or a comment on the podcast. I appreciate your listening and would greatly appreciate that feedback from you. I'll be talking to you all soon.
There is so much to cover. It's Black Maternal Health Week. We're actually culminating Black Maternal Health Week today on the 17th. It began on the 11th. Black Maternal Health Week we'll circle back around. It is but one topic that we will cover today on this special edition where we've got our finger on the pulse of Black motherhood. Can't help but, because Anya and myself are both mothers, and today's conversation is going to be all about the state of Black motherhood today, because it's up and down all over the place, all around.
Right.
Like, what are we waking up to today?
And that's the thing, is we don't know what we're waking up to day to day, and most days what we're waking up to is just overwhelming, depressing even. Yeah. I've heard from a lot of my clients this week that they're really struggling, with their own mental health on top of everything else that's going on in their lives.
And on top of, we're still mothering and we're still showing up to mother because there's no days off from that. And so we're going to talk about a lot of things today. There's so many intersections and just so much going on, and we're going to do our very best to get a handle on at least some of it, because this week alone has been major. It's been really, really major. All sorts of things are happening. The news is dominated right now, of course, with the brutal police murder of Daunte Wright.
Yeah. And that it's happening just up the street, it seems, looking at the map. I don't know much about Minneapolis, but right up the street from the trial of the police officer that murdered George Floyd.
Yeah.
And so I can't even imagine for the people who live in that city.
I know. But it's like the turmoil day in and day out. And again, I think of the mothers. I think of people who are raising children adjacent to all of these things that have been going on, even regardless of where you stand on what side of any issue, there's been a lot of protesting happening and a lot of violence. And I can only imagine what parents of children in the cities where, these marches have been taking place, in some places for months, and it hasn't stopped.
Right.
And what that's like, the effect that has on them, on their children, day in, day out,
And hasn't stopped because police murders continue. And there seems to be even an uptick in what we're seeing. And not that means that it's new.
Right.
But just that more people are reporting, more people are talking about it. It's all over the news at this point because clearly something needs to be done. And hopefully we'll be able to offer, just some pointers on, the conversations you can have with your children, some pointers on how mothers can take care of themselves as we're bracing ourselves for whatever comes next.
Yeah, we're definitely going to touch on that because it can't just be always the harshness.
Right.
The harshness. I'll just leave it at that. It can't be that always. There has to be some sort of solace that we're able to find somewhere in something. Something has to be beautiful still. And we can get lost in the news cycles, and you don't even have to watch the news, really. Like, we can get lost. Mostly, I think most people now probably are lost in the social media cycle.
Yeah, definitely.
More than anything else.
Definitely.
And so, and how do you get around that in this day and age? I'm a millennial, and I know the magnetic pull of the internet.
Yes. And the other thing is that so much of our lives get tied to it, and so your password for whatever website goes through your Facebook. And so it's like, no matter what, as much as you can try to avoid it, at some point during your day, you're going to come across it.
Whether you want it or not. We just had that happen before we got on the air. I'm scrolling in my iPad, and Apple News just really wants me to know about Prince Philip and the British royal family and all of their, occasions and things. And I didn't ask for that, but it's just there, like at least 4 or 5 headlines, so that's what it's like though. With everything, we're inundated with information. And thankfully, I will say, there's been more of a focus on mental health, especially Black mental health. I'll say Black and brown, because I think of the beginning of the pandemic, and I really think that our communities saw a need to kind of, be really conscious and aware of one another's mental health.
Yeah.
And it's tough sometimes because the cycle is constant of these killings and, the violence against us.
Yes.
Trump was violence against us. That his
for
whole
4
entire,
solid years.
That, in case y'all aren't sure, that was violence against us. So we've been going through a lot.
And that's I'm so glad that you called it violence, because I think a lot of times we think of violence as only being physical violence. And we have to understand that this constant barrage of the Trump years, right? So the Trump years, the constant barrage of Black bodies being murdered on our screens on a loop all of that is psychological violence.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, even more than, I don't want to compare or, like make one greater than the other. But it's one thing to know that police are murdering Black bodies on a regular basis. It's another thing for them to play it in front of us over and over and over again. That is also violence.
And we don't have to choose that violence. It seems drastic. The only way to avoid it, one of the only ways that I can think of, and that is, stepping away and logging out of it all. Mm-hmm. And that's now seen as like a drastic move. That's daring. But aside from that, it's there in so many ways. I do think that it is possible to exist in these spaces if you're very, very careful.
Yeah. You definitely have to curate. And it's tedious, and it's, you have to take your time and do it. But, there may be times that you have to unfollow those news channels, and there may be times that you have to unfollow certain friends or sometimes even activists, because that's their work, and we are grateful for the work that they do. But if you find yourself falling into that loop and realizing that your mood is being greatly affected by it on a day-to-day basis, you have to mute it, you have to unfollow it, or give yourself certain times, that you'll go on, limit your time that you're on there. We really have to take care of our minds. We really have to realize that that is also a form of violence. The news cycle, we equate watching the news with being informed. And that's not always the case.
Correct.
It's not, it's probably more indoctrination than information.
You're so on point with that, because the news is all sponsored,
Absolutely.
So it's skewed. And especially if we want to talk about revolutionary motherhood, well, we have this responsibility to our children, to, the future, to show up for them as whole as we possibly can. And so giving all of our energy and our time to these sources, and getting to the point where, it feels like you're missing something. Yeah. If you're not there, and you almost like an addiction.
It is an addiction. Yeah, it absolutely is an addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are things that you have to weigh out. And I'm glad that we went in this direction that we weren't planning to, because I feel like the cyber addiction is a very, very appropriate thing to discuss with modern motherhood. Yeah. Because it affects our mental health and we don't realize it. Mm-hmm. I've had it happen to me where I step away from the phone and I have this feeling of upset, and it's like, oh, what was I upset about? Nothing even really happened. And I realized, it was something that I saw or that I read.
Right. And that's key, because there was a moment where I realized that I become very upset during the day about things that are on my phone. Mm-hmm. But when I step away from the phone and I'm present in where I am in the moment, whether it's with my children or with my clients or just myself. Yeah. Right? But that there's no upset there. And so we really have to be mindful about how much we're staying in it, and paying attention to our body and listening to our body when we get those cues. Yeah. There are days that I'm scrolling and I'm just like, my eyebrows furrowed and like jaw real tight,
sore. And I'm like, what? How did I get to this point?
And then I look up in front of me and I'm like, my son's coming in from soccer practice and the lawn guy just finished. Yeah. And, if I look up in my world, we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are okay in that day.
And it's important to really let that sink in and allow that to allow it, because there's also this call, whether you're a mother or not, if you're a Black woman, there's this expectation that we even have for one another that we're going to always show up. Right. We're going to show up. We're going to be right in somebody's face.